Today, we commemorate the liberation of Auschwitz. Just as the voices that trivialize the Holocaust are growing louder and louder, I want you to take a short, painful journey with me to the moment my mother arrived at Auschwitz in 1944. I ask you, close your eyes and truly try to imagine what she must have experienced at that point in time. She had been living a totally normal life in Czechoslovakia. Then, Adolf Hitler came to power. Soon after, the Nazis set out to conquer Europe, and life turned into hell for the Jewish people. Life turned into a total nightmare. Suddenly, she and her family were herded into ghettos, and then onto cattle cars. Cattle cars? Cattle cars used to transport animals? I want you to think. I want you to stop. Close your eyes, please, and think what that means, what that was like. Being in a cattle car packed with men, women, and children, little babies in their mother's arms. You couldn't go to the bathroom. There was a pail on each cattle car. There was a bucket with water, hardly enough for everyone. The cold, the heat. Can you only imagine, as a mother, a father, a grandmother, a grandfather, what that must have been like for the people on that cattle car, for the thousands on that cattle train? And then, after a long journey that could have taken days and days and days, after a long journey in those hell on wheels, my mother and her family arrived at the ultimate hell called Auschwitz. Auschwitz was the place where they were gassing and cremating more than 10,000 Jews per day, 7 days a week. Can we even contemplate and imagine what I am saying? Auschwitz, where they killed more than 1 million of the 6 million Jews murdered during the Holocaust? 85% of the people, of the Jews who arrived in Auschwitz, went straight to their death. If you were under 14, if you were elderly, women who were pregnant, women in general in most cases, if you had any kind of handicap, if there was anything wrong with you, if you were sick in any fashion and they looked at you, and the doctors, the Nazi doctors, looked at you, you went straight to the gas chamber. Auschwitz, where my teenage mother found herself on that infamous selection line into the hellish camp, facing two choices. Either immediate death, you went straight to the gas chamber and that was it, or delayed death by starvation, disease, and back-breaking labor. You know, my mother was on that line and she told these stories again and again. She told the story of her nephew, Sheila, 3 years old, who looked up at his mother and said, "Begeitzens nicht hargenen?" I lived with the story my entire life. Begeitzens nicht hargenen? Are they going to kill us? A 3-year-old asking her mother as they were on that line, being stripped of their dignity. Begeitzens nicht hargenen? Sheila and his mother and grandmother went straight to the gas chambers. And my mother's sister, another story that I will never forget and live with. One of my mother's sisters, who could have lived and possibly survived, said to the rest of the family as they were on that line, she looked at the family and said, "We can't lassen Mami gehen allein. We can't let mother go alone." that sister who was 19 years old went with her mother straight to the gas chamber. That is the reality. That is what happened to hundreds of thousands of people and millions in Auschwitz and many of the other concentration camps. My mother survived, but she was stripped of her identity. The day she got to Auschwitz, her name was no longer Frida. She had no name. She was a number. The number that she had on her left arm, A12984. And everyone who lived even temporarily at Auschwitz, my mother was A12984. I beg you, think about that. I'm talking about a concentration camp. And the people in the concentration camp, those who lived like my mother telling me the story that every morning at 4 a.m. in the morning, all the women in her camp were forced to line up outside of their the place that they slept on the floor, on hay, naked most of the time. Everyone had to be counted. The Nazis wanted to make sure that, the numbers were exact. We can't even imagine. But I ask you to think about it. How about breakfast? What was breakfast like in the morning at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock? The idea was to starve people to death and then send them to the crematoria, then send them to the gas chambers, because there were always new transports of Jews arriving in Auschwitz. Every Jew who came on Monday could be replaced on Tuesday by another Jew who would be worked to their death. That young girl, my mother, who lost her entire family and survived literally hell on earth, that could be anybody, anywhere. But if everything is Holocaust, that's what happens today. Oh, it's a Holocaust. If everything is, Nazis, if everything is Goebbels, if everything is Hitler, that is a perfect recipe for repeating the very conditions that produced Nazism. So I beg the world, the next time you get the urge to make a flippant Holocaust comparison, just remember, leave the Holocaust alone. Leave the Holocaust alone, for God's sake. I say to everyone out there, we must be united against hate, against antisemitism, against racism. There is never an excuse for hate. My mother, who lived to the age of 95, loved people. But all of her life, she would say to me, why? Why did they do this to us? What did we do to anyone that we deserved the hate, the destruction, the murder of my sisters, brothers, parents? Why was the question she never stopped asking.
What I went through all my life, all my nicest years, my young years, my good years, I spent it by Hitler. Why? I would know. I don't want nothing. I want to know why. Did I kill somebody? Did I rob somebody? Why?